Welcome to Living the Way, hosted by Pastor Charlie and Dr. Melanie Jimmerson. Step back and join us as we take a closer look at how the Bible really can and does apply to our lives today. We really do value your feedback, so write a comment and don't forget to share so your friends will be blessed as well.
Well, welcome back to Living the Way.
Absolutely.
I just love our new title, Living the Way.
Yeah.
We changed it for several different reasons, but
Yeah.
I'm glad we did because I think it means more. We need to be people of the way.
We do.
People need to see it. We're going to kind of talk about that today.
Yes, we are.
That's
a good point.
Yes, it is.
You didn't make that point earlier, so yeah.
And the neat thing is I had no idea that it would fit into the scriptures that we have today.
Mm-hmm.
But we're going to be talking and reading and discussing Psalm 40. So if you're watching and you're watching it as a video, which that's the only way you can because this isn't live, but you can pause it right now. Get out your own Bible.
Yeah.
Open it up to Psalm 40 so you can maybe go along with this because we're going to be talking about different verses within Psalm 40.
One of the reasons that we chose or that we landed on Psalm 40 is because this past Monday was President's Day. That's what we call it here in the United States. It's really George Washington's birthday.
That's right, officially.
Yeah.
Still.
And then it became officially Lincoln and Washington's birthday.
Well, but it was still referred to as Washington's birthday, but they celebrated both.
Because they were both born in February.
Right.
Yeah.
22nd for Washington, the 12th for Abraham Lincoln.
So, one of the many things we talked about that this morning is that the Washington Monument is, I don't know if you really have any idea of what an awesome stele that object is. First of all, if you were to ever be on the ground on your feet looking up at it,
it's humongous.
it really is.
Yeah.
It doesn't have the museum at the base of it like the San Jacinto Monument that we have right here in Houston. San Jacinto Monument is it's actually a little taller than the Washington Monument, only by 3 or 4 or 5 feet, I think. But you can't get up close to the bottom of it because of the museum. Well, you can walk right up to the side of the monument, put your hand on the side of the monument. Now, you could when I was there.
Right.
I hope they still let people do that. Because if you want to put your prayer hand on there and pray for our nation, if you happen to be in Washington and want to do that, do that. If they will let you, if you can get close enough, take a moment, and because it's an awesome thing to do. Put your hand on it and pray for your nation.
Yes.
And that's in accordance to Second Chronicles 4:17.
7:14.
7:14. I get that backwards. Yeah. Second Chronicles. Well, what are we supposed to do?
Yeah.
Da-da-da-da-da, 4 things. If my people, blah, 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 and pray.
Yes.
So that's the last thing, about. But we also just recently now have learned that there is something real special on the top of it.
That no one can see, because it's way up there. But
550 feet.
Yeah, but this monument, humongous monument that towers up, on the top of that monument, it comes to what looks like a point. It's not a point. It looks that way because when it comes up to a certain amount, it stops and it's flat. And on that flat part is a disc.
Oh.
And that disc is in Latin.
Laos Deo,
Uh-huh.
which means glory to God.
That's right.
And what a wonderful thing. Here it is, 550 feet up in the air, and it's looking straight up, and it says, glory to God.
Yes. And, in a nation that wasn't founded on Christian
Oh,
Yeah,
well.
right. We know better.
neither one of us agree with that one.
That's right. We know better. We were based on Christianity, and we have so many things that prove it. Everybody well, let me just address, there may be some people watching
let's
today
talk about that.
that may, question that or not. I want to challenge you. I mean, there are so many easy ways to do it now, especially with being online and stuff. Just read some of the farewell addresses of presidents.
Oh, yeah.
Start with George Washington. Start with his. And if you don't think George Washington does it enough, let me tell you, they all will. Right down to the one that they say was the author of our Constitution, the Declaration, and all that, Thomas Jefferson.
Mm-hmm.
And he was the one that penned separation of church and state, not in any of our official documents. I'll talk about that in just a second.
Right.
But even his farewell address, you'll find out he was a devout Christian. And he says that we have to have faith. We cannot have morality and live as a free nation, and you cannot have morality without God.
Well, because he was smart enough to know you cannot legislate morality.
Right. Mm-hmm.
That's just a big bunch of rules.
Now, that separation of church and state was actually in a letter. I believe it was written to him from a church organization that was one, and this was after he was president, wanted clarification on something. And that's where that famous line comes in. There needs to be a separation between the church and the state. But let me tell you, the way that it's stated, if you read the whole thing,
Got it backwards.
he
totally.
was saying that the state had no right and no business to be in the church.
Right.
It went one way, not both ways.
Right.
The church has to be involved in our government. If not, we're heathens. And our Constitution really means nothing.
Well, we are going to present the Constitution as a study a little later on this year. And so we are really going to be boning up on the Constitution again. I think I need it more than he does.
I don't know.
but it's complicated, and you want to learn how to take it apart and look at it. Because if all of us Americans, if we were to be well apprised of two documents, the Word of God and the Constitution of our nation, then we would be able to dispel all arguments.
That's right. But unfortunately, we Christians or Americans, we'll go Americans first. Americans today know we have a Constitution. They have no idea what it says.
And they don't even know what a Constitution is to begin
Yes.
with. They've taken all of that out of school. I don't know if y'all know that, but in order for your school to even be allowed to teach it in school, the teacher has to have certain credentials. And those credentials are hard to find.
Well, I'm believing that it's going to come back.
Okay,
We need
that's good.
economics back in our schools. We need actually history, American history.
How about truthful history?
Yeah.
Not redone.
Right.
But so we want to. I just want to give you just one little heads up.
Okay.
One of I used to teach a very short version of the preamble of the Constitution, because the company that I worked for when I was teaching in only had one day that they would set aside to allow those of us who wanted to teach the Constitution. We got to teach it for one day, and when you have 6 classes per day, then you got 1 hour with one class out of all of that. And all of our classes were 125 hours to get the certification that you. So 1 hour out of 125. So to say that, okay, but this is what I did. I realized by the second time I taught that, I realized there's one thing in the Constitution that all those, and most of the people in my classes were they were between 20 and 30. And I'm not a screaming preacher or anything like that, but the day that I taught the preamble to the Constitution, I would surprise everybody, because then I would come in the class, I wouldn't go, "Good morning, class," or anything like that. I would just stand there and look at them, and I'd go, "The preamble to the Constitution says, 'We are the king.'" And I would say it real loud, and everybody would go, "Dr. B!" And I would say, "What did I just say?" And everybody would go, "Well, what?" And I'd say, "It says we, the people of the United States of America, we are the king."
That's right. And we've lost that even today. I mean, we need to understand that we don't work for our government. Our government's supposed to work for us. We are the king.
Right.
We, the people, are the ones that rule this nation, not those that are elected up there in Washington, D.C. And let me tell you, I respect them. They have a job to do that I don't believe I would want to do.
Right.
But they are supposed to answer to us, not us answer to them.
And let me say, because I work in politics, that's really not, that's not as far-fetched as it sounds. But what has really happened to us is that we have developed a deep state of bureaucrats.
Mm-hmm.
And the bureaucrats are the ones who are really guilty with taking the Constitution and just shredding it.
Right.
So we have to look at that, and our president now is taking a look at that and seeing, this is an absolute violation of our Constitution. Let's get rid of it.
That's right.
And boy, it's making people mad, but you know what? We need that. We have to have that if we are going to have a true revival of the constitutional rights in our nation, which is what we're looking for. That's got to happen.
It does. And I don't think people realize that either we are going to stay a constitutional republic, or we will transform into either socialism, communism, it'll be in that vein. That's the only two roads.
Yeah.
That's the only two roads. And, a lot of people say, well, aren't you being a little, simplistic? Well, there is just good and evil.
There's no gray area.
There is no gray. Either it's right or it's wrong.
Right.
That's what a lot of people have against Christians, especially when we have a true biblical worldview, mm-hmm. and we say, well, what does the Bible say? They're going like, what are you getting the Bible for? Because God knows what's right and what's wrong. And if, the best way for me to be right, I can be right. Did you know I can be right? All I have to do is agree with God.
Oh, okay. That makes me feel better.
Yeah, I can be right. All I got to do is find out what God says and say, yeah, that's what I believe. But a lot of people have a problem with that, with Christians. They think we're intolerant, we're bullheaded, we're brainwashed, we're all this kind of. That is not so. It's just that we have come to realize that there are two forces, good and evil. We get to decide which side are we on. And I would suggest, because unfortunately, I believe we have a lot of Christians that want to be on God's side, but they don't want to give up the other side. And so they're trying to drag it in.
I don't think they know they can.
Right.
I'm going to be a little more gracious than you.
Okay, that's
because
fine.
Having been not older person, but a later life, I was not saved when I was a kid. So it took me a while
Mm-hmm.
to learn
Yeah.
that I didn't have to live that way anymore.
Right.
and that was a choice I made to live that way because now I have that choice.
And that's what this program is all about,
Yeah,
living the
the
way.
way.
You know, it's something we have to learn. And in fact, our scripture basically says that. Now I know, you've got it in the King, but, it starts off that waited patiently.
First of all, wait a minute.
Oh, okay.
First of all, we are looking at Psalms 40.
I told them that already.
Did you?
Yeah, I told them get their Bible out.
I wasn't paying attention.
But you got to wait patiently for the Lord for what? To help. Okay. But then
for
it
him
said-
to hear your
yeah,
prayer.
then He'll hear.
Yeah.
He'll hear. He'll lift us out of despair, out of the mud or the
Okay, wait,
miry clay.
Let me read it in the King James. 'Cause
Yeah.
I like how it says this. It says, I waited patiently for the Lord. If you're waiting on the Lord, the hardest thing in the world is to be patient. Oh my gosh, come on, Lord, I've been asking and asking for this. When are you going to show up? When is this going to happen? And sometimes when you ask
Yeah.
for it, it happens almost too soon.
Right.
Wait a minute, Lord, I'm not ready.
Yeah. Well, that's that word long suffering it talks about in the Bible. And somebody asked me one day, well, what does long suffering means? Exactly what it says.
Yeah.
Suffering long.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen right away. We got to do it patiently.
And
It's
David,
hard.
and we can look at David's life, and look at the story of his life and see he really did have to wait patiently.
Yeah.
And then other times he wasn't ready, and so he's truthful in that. And so he says, I waited patiently for the Lord, and he, the Lord, inclined unto me, meaning
He heard my cry.
he put his ear closer to him and heard his cry. And let me say, that is something that we are privileged to as well. Psalms 5 says, I get up early in the morning because I know that the Lord will incline his ear to my prayer.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a real practice.
Yes.
Once you get used to and get into the groove of your prayer life, you're gonna be able to discern that.
Right.
Yeah. And then he says, he heard my cry. Well, it's okay to use the word cry.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's not so much a cry as much as it is a complaint.
Yeah, well, or it's just an expression. It's just, a cry can be, Melanie.
Yeah.
That's a cry.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it can be something very simple, or it can be something in depth. Sometimes I don't know what to ask God for.
Yeah. And
And that's when He just got to hear my heart.
right. And he's a big enough God to know what we're trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes he will supply the words.
And sometimes He don't.
No.
Yeah, but the thing is, we have
He
to learn.
always knows.
Yeah, we have to learn to accept His answers.
Then he says, so after he listened to this, and what David did, it doesn't say exactly right here, but I know he brought a supplication to the Lord. And then he says, he, the Lord, brought David up also out of a horrible pit, out of the miry clay. Now, one of the things we did talk about this is the miry clay is different than just trouble.
Mm-hmm.
It's easily dismissed as, he brought me out of trouble. No, wait a minute. Let's talk about what it really says. It brings me out of trouble that I'm not going to be able to get myself out of.
Right.
It's like quicksand.
Right, and that's what we were talking about, the miry clay. Let me tell you, here in Texas, I learned about miry clay, especially
We
when
know
I worked
all about it.
when I worked outside.
Yeah.
I'm telling you what, that stuff, especially when it's
Here on the
miry,
coast.
it's wet.
Oh, yeah.
And so when you step in it, it's like it's grabbed a hold of you.
It sucks you down.
You better have your shoes tied and tied good, or when you try to pick up your foot may come, but the shoe will stay there. It holds on to you. That's
And
what
what
it's
else
talking
does
about.
it do? It leaves you with a lot of junk all over your
all
shoe.
over you, yes.
It's hard to clean off.
Yes, it is. In fact, I worked outside, so I've seen people try to shovel that. And you spend more time getting that clay off the shovel. Once you get it out, it's like, okay. You had to have something hard to hit, like.
Because you have to shake it off.
Yeah.
But sometimes you have to knock it off.
Yes.
Well,
but that's the type of thing. It's just not just regular old trouble. And it's not something that you're going to be able to do on your own. Because it says, God did that. He lifted me out of it. It takes him. You really want your life to change? Well, let me tell you, you better change your life and start living for him. Start seeking him. That's when he's going to lift you. Now, the New Living Translation says not just a pit. It said the pit of despair.
Okay.
I really like that, adding that despair, because I've been there. Mm-hmm. I've lived part of my life, especially when I was a baby Christian, just looking at my circumstances, thinking,
well, how must this
in fact, I honestly thought, I don't think I'll ever get out of
overcome this.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good point, because the scripture says you are an overcomer.
Yes.
From the day you are saved.
That's right.
You become an overcomer, not on your own, but the Lord will allow it. The Lord will let supernatural things happen to prove to you
that's right.
that you can overcome, and will show you how good it is on the other side of the overcoming.
Right.
We have a little saying here in Texas, and I don't mind it that I speak Texanese. What can I say? He's a Yankee or something. I don't know what you are.
Be careful now.
You're not a Yankee. I know you're a Yankee. But if you're north of the Red River, you're no count.
Well, I may not have been born here, but I got here as quick as I could.
Well, okay. We're glad to have you. We really are glad to have you. And he and I are playing with each other because we just have that going on between us all the time. But here in Texas, we have this phrase that says, back in my mess. Well, he and I came up with a word that because we have had to do a lot of counseling with people who had a mess in their background. What did that mess give them but a messimony? A messimony.
Messimony.
Okay, so when you begin to walk out of that miry clay, you begin to make some progress in your Christian commitment.
And remember, when you walk out of that clay, some of it's coming with you.
Yes.
And it takes God a little while to get it off of you.
Well, he does that by setting you upon the rock.
And that's the next thing.
Now, let's talk about the rock for a minute.
He set my feet.
Yeah, read it. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, it says he set my feet on solid ground, on the rock, and steadied me as I walked along.
And established my goings.
That's right.
Or established my steps.
That's right.
And
so now we've got a picture of him not only getting us out, cleaning us up, but putting us on something we can stand on. There's something that is firm, that's not going to be wishy-washy, that we can count on. That's the word. Right. That's his word. That's Jesus Christ.
This is the truth.
Yeah. But he sets us on that, but then
he'll
help us walk it.
Let's go. Wait a second. Let's go back for one second, because we talked about this too. But to be set upon the rock means that the two suppositions of faith. That means that we have come up out of enough of the miry clay that we now know we are a person of faith.
Right.
We can exercise it.
Right.
So the rock is the revelation that the Lord gives us about where we were and where we're going. Because how do you know where you're going to go? How do you can look back over your shoulder and say, okay, I was there, but what is this? Well, standing you on the rock gives you the permission or the jurisdiction to be able to say, okay, I am standing on the rock of the revelation of Jesus Christ.
That's right. And that's what Peter,
It's exactly what he says.
That's what Peter said, when
thou art the Christ.
Yeah, when Jesus said, well, who do you say I am? Peter ended up saying, well, thou art the Christ, the Son of God.
The Son of the living God.
Yeah, that's right, the Son of the living God.
And
that's when Jesus said, upon this rock,
Right.
the revelation of who Jesus truly is.
It's interesting. It's not just any rock.
Right.
It is.
It's
this,
not a rock.
It's this rock.
That's right.
So, okay, we're so far so good.
Uh-huh.
We got a messimony. Now we have a testimony.
Right.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
All right. So far so good. Now, here's what everybody enjoys who have gotten to this place of revelation in their new life, and that is that they have a new spiritual condition that is usually manifested through the gifts. And in here, in the word, it says, gave me a new song to sing.
Uh-huh.
But I don't sing, but I play.
Uh-huh.
I've been called to teach. I've been called
I don't think that necessarily means a melody.
Okay, good, because
Yeah.
I can't carry one in a bucket.
Well, but the thing is, when it says a new song, I think it means actually a new life.
Uh-huh.
I mean, because, I can even look back to when I first got saved. I couldn't see it to begin with. But, I mean, my life really did change to start with. And all of a sudden, things were different. I didn't realize it until later on. I had traveled some, and I look back, and I'm going like, oh.
Well, and here's why I think that's true of all of us.
Mm-hmm.
Because we'll stop there.
Yeah.
If we realize that, we'll be going, okay, I got it made now.
Yeah.
And we never have it made. We have revelation built on top of revelation, built on top of revelation.
Built on top of revelation.
And if that's not, if there is not that in place, you're going to get stale.
Uh-huh. Oh, and really stale is a good word. Who likes stale bread?
Right, yeah.
Yeah. I don't even like croutons.
I don't either.
And I have to
Interesting.
soak croutons in some kind of juice to make them soft again. But, I don't like stale stuff. And let me tell you, stale, and, that's the difference between the Jordan River and the Dead Sea.
Yeah,
The Dead Sea is stale. Why? Because it has inlet, but no outlet. Okay? The river has an inlet and an outlet.
Right.
And that's something that Christians need to realize.
We're about to get close on our time, so
Yep.
I just want to say, here's one thing about this. I mentioned it earlier. The new song is a metaphor for a testimony.
That's right.
And I can tell you of testimonies nowadays that I'm 50 years old in the Lord that I would have been astounded about if I were only 25 years old in the Lord, or even 12 years old in the Lord, or
Right.
even 2 years old in the Lord. Your testimony builds
That's
with
right.
your experience with the Lord, and it just gets better and better.
And better. And that last little phrase about, the new song and all that, but it says, many will see what he has done
And believe.
and believe.
Now, that's not to be an ambition.
No.
That is just simply a blessing.
But, it may not be an ambition, but it's the duty of every Christian. And that brings us back to where we began with living the way.
Right.
If
Right.
we don't live the way, how can we point people? I can't tell someone how to drive to Alaska.
No.
I can't. You know why? I've never driven to Alaska.
Okay.
I don't know how. Now, I could probably get out Google Maps and stuff like that and read it and do all that. But,
Here's what I would do.
Yeah.
Glenn, we're going to Alaska now.
Yeah.
He's our Uber driver, and he is a really sweet guy.
But the thing is, you know what? I can tell you how to get from Houston,
yeah.
Texas to Danville, Kentucky.
Oh, yeah. Because you've driven that
Because
many
I've
times.
driven it many times. I can tell you exactly, I can tell you the shortest way. I can tell you, well, now, wait a minute, if you're going during this time of year, you don't want to go this way, you want to go this way. But if you're in this time of year, you want to go the other way. There's more than one way to get there, and it can go. But if you want to see a scenic route, you go this way, because I know all those different ways.
I always
Why?
want to go the scenic route.
Because I've traveled it.
Yeah.
So someone can come to me and say, can you tell me how to get to Kentucky? Sure. I can tell you the easiest way.
Who would want? Never mind. Never mind. Never mind.
But the point is, yes, we need to be able to live in our lives in a way that we are showing people
Right.
the way to live. And if we don't, I think something's wrong.
And here's
I'm not sure what it is, but
But what did he say? Living
yes.
the way, not preaching the way.
Mm-mm.
Although that, in his case, is necessary because he's the pastor.
Right?
But for me, it has to be living the way.
Yeah.
Because
Well, but you get to preach too. We all preach.
yeah.
It's our testimony. It's a verbal testimony.
Right.
Is the preaching, I believe, is what the word is doing.
Okay.
Now, I do have a calling to preach, but we all have been commanded to share the gospel, and that's the preaching of the
That's
word.
that's what I'm
your
trying to get at.
testimony.
That's what I want to
Okay.
get at. And where do you get that at?
Yeah.
You get it at church.
That's right. And what do you need to do?
Go to church a lot.
Go to church a lot. So this brings us to another end of our living the way. Please, I just want to say, share our post. Now, we're also on Facebook and YouTube. So if you go to YouTube, and also I have found out that we actually get better service and stuff when more people like,
Oh.
especially on
A
YouTube.
like is really necessary.
So when you go to YouTube, in fact, if not, just go to YouTube, find us, Living the Way. East Houston Revival Center Presents is the best way, because that way it hones in on just the living way. East Houston Revival Center Presents. And then look for Living the Way there, and then click that like button, because then and then share it. Share it to your friends. Share it on Facebook. Share. Let's keep getting the word out, because you have no idea what one of your friends might be going
Right.
through
That's
right
exactly
now.
right.
And
Have mercy on them.
and then one of what we're saying here today, something may touch their life and change their life to where maybe they'll begin living the way. So until next time, good night. God bless.
Thank you for watching, and remember, be in church tomorrow. If you don't have a home church, you really need to find one. The church needs you, and you really need the church.